Five Nights at Freddy's. Everyone and their grandmother knows about this little horror indie darling turned massively popular multimedia conglomerate. Everyone knows that it started as a desperate developer's last-ditch attempt at cashing in on his Chuck E. Cheese-esque character designs by making a horror game about surveilling haunted animatronics as a kid's restaurant's night guard. That unique concept quickly took off into mainstream culture like no tomorrow. What followed was numerous sequels, enough toys, t-shirts, Halloween costumes, plushies, and Funko Pops to fill up an entire Walmart, a large series of books and short stories, and a theatrical film that pumped out nearly $300 million at the box office. FNaF is massive today, to say the least, and practically has been since its release. I would know because, well, I was there for it. Every kid who's on the internet in 2014 knew what Five Nights at Freddy's was. This creepy, eerie horror game that just had this siren-like call that drew in the young crowd just as much as its intended adult audience. I remember hearing about it one day at lunch in the 6th grade when a kid snuck his iPad into school to play the mobile version of the first game. Everyone in the class surrounded him to watch the game in action. To say that that class was hooked would be an understatement, and what do you know, a sequel was already underway. A few more months after that was a third game, and by the first anniversary, a fourth. FNaF fans were consistently eating good and have been since the series' inception. Not to mention all the drip-fed lore that led to theorizing and speculation surrounding each and every game and website teaser, consistently fueling fan interest while each game was in development. 11 and 12-year-old Liam was there for every game theory no matter when or where. He was watching Dawko, Smike, Razbowski, 8-Bit Gaming, or Zombie Wars SMT. All of my friends were constantly talking about FNaF, giving each other our theories on who the purple guy was, if he was indeed Phone Guy, the timeline order, who were the missing kids, was Marionette Purple Guy's daughter, etc, etc. I played fan game after fan game, mainly ones based on Nintendo games because I mean, well, isn't it obvious looking at what I like? Anywho, the one thing I never did was actually, play the damn games. As an 11-year-old, owning a Steam account was a foreign concept, especially asking your parents to get you money to buy a horror game when your bedtime is still 10 p.m. I remember using iTunes gift cards that I received for birthdays and Christmas to buy the mobile versions of 1 through 4, but never bothered actually sitting down trying to play them because it just didn't feel right. I got Sister Location and Pizza Simulator when those came out, but once again never actually finished them. And honestly, that seems to be the case with a lot of FNaF fans. FNaF's fanbase is like the horror game scene's Dragon Ball fanbase, where a shocking amount of the franchise's fans have never actually played the games, either consuming them through Markiplier's Let's Plays or game theories, just like me. It's been many years since then, and I as a fan fell off after Pizza Simulator, only really building interest back up again after the first movie came out, but still never picking any of the games up myself. But now it's 2025 and the second movie is on the horizon. Therefore, I say we dial back the clock and see if all the FNaF games that have released in the 11 years since the series' inception have aged or not. I'm going to be splitting this video up into 2 parts, starting with FNaF 1 to Ultimate Custom Night, and then in part 2 talking about everything that released afterwards. So without further ado, let's begin. Starting off with the OG, the one that started it all, we've got plain ol' Five Nights at Freddy's. Like I said before, this game came as the result of the poor reception of Scott Cawthon's previous game, Chipper & Sons Lumber Company, where critics said the character designs looked as if they were Chuck E. Cheese animatronics. In an attempt to combat this idea, he used his character design skills to create 4 now iconic characters that would stand the test of time: Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie the Bunny, Chica the Chicken, and Foxy the Pirate. The game was released on August 8th, 2014 on Steam after receiving the Steam greenlight, and later on mobile devices a few weeks later. Crazy to think that you had to get a green light to allow your game on Steam back then. The game has you tasked with the role of night guard for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a family restaurant that's basically 90s Chuck E. Cheese. Your goal is to monitor the animatronics and make it to the end of your shift at 6 a.m., with the twist being that these animatronics are haunted, and are not just out to kill you, but stuff you inside an animatronic suit. To avoid these animatronics, you've got large steel doors in your office that you can shut, lights to check on what's outside of them, and a security camera system to keep track of where they all are. Why not just keep the doors closed at all times? Well, you've only got a limited amount of power per night, and if you run out, Freddy will come by and play his iconic little jingle for you and finish the job. You've also got to keep an eye on Foxy, as if you aren't checking the cameras enough, he'll slowly come out from behind his curtain in Pirate's Cove and come rushing down the hallway into your office. Same with Freddy, although he moves just like the others, but never moves back into previous rooms, instead being stalled wherever he is by looking directly at him via the camera. Once you get the hang of everything and get into a rhythm of checking the camera for Freddy enough that he or Foxy can't move and listening around for Bonnie and Chica while checking your doors, the game becomes incredibly simple in a therapeutic to play kind of sense. The game's strengths, in my opinion, come from how it delivers the horror to you, because honestly, this game is scary as fuck if you ask me. For his first time making a horror game, Scott really knew how to hone in on the ambience and setting. The small creaks, sounds, clattering, footsteps, audio cues, and just general ambient sounds really send chills up your spine. All of that coupled with the incredible looking settings, whether it be your office or the many rooms visible via the cameras, or even the textures on the animatronics themselves. For as simple as this game truly is, just being a bunch of 2D images, I really found myself sunk into this small little world inside a pizza joint. We'll continue to see with each game in the series that sound and ambience are a strong point in each, as well as the visuals, character designs, and settings. If there's one small thing that I love in games, it's when the sound design scratches my brain in just the right way. Here in FNaF 1, it's the small clicking sounds whenever you make an input with your mouse, the flicking of the lights, the sound of pulling up and putting down your camera, etc. Another example of this is in Luigi's Mansion for the GameCube. I love the sound of Luigi walking around on carpet in that game, because it just sounds so satisfying to my ears. Going back to the textures, I think for a one-man job, everything looks so fucking real thanks to the great texture Scott plays in the environment, really allowing everything to have a sense of reality that boosts this game's spook factor that much more. The jump scare sounds, the loud dramatic noise when an animatronic is at your door, Freddy's laugh, the glitched and jumbled mess when the "it's me" glitch occurs, the footsteps of the animatronics moving around, or even the eerie groaning of Bonnie or Chica when they're inside your office. Also, the eeriness of the Toreador march as Freddy's eyes glow in your door and the song getting cut off only to be followed by silence and footsteps is iconic for good reason. It all just sounds so fucking good and amplifies any sense of dread or horror that this game provides. A lot of the fear, for me at least, also came from the sense of dread of having to replay this entire 8+ minute night again, with all of the stress of making sure you don't die. Whenever I got killed, not only did I jump because of the loud noise and sudden image of an animatronic gunning for my head, but also because, fuck, damn it, I lost! Speaking of difficulty, I do think that things ramp up pretty smoothly here. The phone guy monologues at the beginning of nights 1 through 4 do a pretty good job of telling you the ins and outs of what to do, either directly or even through subtle hints like checking the cameras often to keep Foxy in his cove. Although a common myth is actually believing phone guy when he says that staying still will make Freddy take longer to kill you when the power goes out. Not to mention the actual dialogue itself sounds so natural. The inflection Scott makes when voicing phone guy makes him sound like a real person talking to you, once again increasing how well the game is able to immerse you. I also think that the appearances of different newspapers posted on the walls and some of the cameras are a great way of giving curious players some of the lore implications of these haunted animatronics. FNAF's series continuity and lore is so complicated now, so going back to basics with FNAF 1 and how simple yet intriguing it is to see newspaper clippings detailing the missing children's incidents is so great. The detail of the restaurant getting odor complaints due to the literal rotting corpses inside the animatronics is fucking rancid, yet a great touch at the same time. Basically, in my opinion, FNAF 1 is the shit. I genuinely think this game holds up incredibly well 11 years later, and for how cheap it is on Steam is a steal for some quick, tense, horrific, immersive, and strategic fun. You've even got the inclusion of a bonus harder 6th night with Beating It Unlocking Custom Night, where you get to tweak the AI values of animatronics yourself. A staple going forward with the series, but still really cool nonetheless. Also, the small chance of encountering Golden Freddy hunched over in your office and his jump scare literally crashing your game is fucking awesome. I love whenever a game is bold enough to crash itself to give effect, or break the fourth wall in a metatextual sense of how the game works. Either way, if you're like me and you haven't played FNAF 1 yet, go do yourself a favor and do so already, because oh boy is it good. After the great success of the first game, Scott got to work right away on a sequel, stating that it would release in a year's time in 2015, only to finish the game so quickly that he pushed it forward to Christmas 2014. He released a demo in November, and that was so successful and bug-free that he just decided to release it in full on November 10th, 2014. The build-up to this game, while only a 2-month period, was awesome. The game's trailer was incredible, with that great London Bridge opening with a withered Bonnie, and the iconic Scott game site teasers began here, where brightening the image would reveal hidden secrets or text. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 essentially promises to double what the first game had given us. Instead of 4 main animatronics to deal with, we have 11. You don't just check the cameras and doors. You have no doors. Instead, you have a hallway leading into your office to check, vents on either side that animatronics can crawl through, the cameras per usual with the pizzeria being huge in comparison to the first, and the music box to wind. To make up for having no doors, you're instead given a Freddy mask. Putting this on quickly enough when an animatronic enters your office will prevent a death, and if you spot an animatronic lurking in your vent, putting this on will get their ass to turn right around. So why not just keep the mask on all night? You don't have to worry about power here, right? Well, no, but instead to balance this out, you have Foxy and the puppet, sometimes referred to as the marionette. For Foxy, if you don't continually flash your flashlight down the hallway, which does have limited battery, then he will eventually jump scare you. Meanwhile, you have to keep winding the music box so that the puppet doesn't get you. So with these two in the mix, you've got to constantly flip your camera up allowing animatronics in, wind the music box, put your mask on when you lower it, flash your flashlight, rinse and repeat. I personally found that the first 5 nights were fairly easy and simplistic to get through. Once again, Phone Guy does a good job at guiding you through with what to do, with you picking up the rest with ease, but Night 6 and the challenges that the custom night provides are great on the difficulty scale, and and provide a great and rewarding challenge. Of course, the infamous 420 mode in FNaF 1 is really hard, but there are simple strategies that fans have found to make the mode mere child's play. But FNaF 2 doesn't fuck around, as even the best strategies that players have managed to come up with over the past 10 years still requires near perfect precision on the player's part to win 1020 mode successfully. Hell, even Night 6 took me at least over 30 attempts to finally complete. I think that is FNaF 2's greatest appeal, the difficulty. Unlike FNaF 1, I feel like the sequel doesn't have the spook factor that the original did. Nothing looks all that realistic or believable. The shiny sheen on the new toy animatronics makes them feel significantly less frightening than the original 4, with Toy Bonnie just being creepy at times but never horrifying. Toy Freddy just looks dumb in my opinion, and honestly, I'd let Toy Chica kill me, beak or no beak, but I think that the beakless design was a really cool creative choice. Mangle is a really cool concept, a toy Foxy animatronic that the children just wouldn't stop fucking around with, so the staff just kept it as a mangled up mess that constantly spews out radio static. Awesome. The withered animatronics are also really cool. At first they seem like rundown versions of the original crew after being left behind after the events of the first game, only for this game to be revealed to be a prequel at the end. Just like in FNaF 1, Nights 5, 6, and 7 end with paychecks or pink notices. FNaF 1's doesn't give an exact year, but FNaF 2's does, that year being 1987, the same year as the bite of 87 that was mentioned in the previous game that shut down the last restaurant. During Night 6's call, Phone Guy mentions you getting swapped to the day shift the next day, not only explaining why you play as someone else during Custom Night, but perhaps Jeremy, who you play as in this game, was victim to Mangle in the bite of 87. A pretty common theory nowadays, but let me have my fucking fun, guys. Back to the Wizards, I actually think that these guys, besides the puppet, are the best designed characters in this game. Sure, Chica certainly would not look that fucking scary in a real-life kids joint, but fuck is her giant jaw effective. Foxy and Freddy look pretty distinct compared to their original designs, and while I do like Foxy's redesign, I'm not as big a fan as Freddy's. Just doesn't look right to me, although Golden Freddy does look awesome with this new look. This is the Golden Freddy. Withered Bonnie, ooh boy. His torn off face revealing his endoskeleton is horrifying as shit, and his metal hand that he reaches out to you with in his jump scare is awesome. Best design in this game besides Golden Freddy for sure. Oh, there's also Balloon Boy. Fuck him. He steals your flashlight if he makes it into your office through the vents, and he is just ugly as hell. Hate his design. Toy Bonnie is the most annoying animatronic though, for not just being a hybrid animatronic, both an office and vent animatronic, but for also being so reliant on RNG, meaning you rely more on luck to overcome him in harder nights like 1020 than actual skill. Going back to Phone Guy's calls, I love how he's so corporate at first and supportive of you throughout each night, but the background events that coincide with the game, some sort of investigation, presumably another missing kids incident, causes him to become weary and jaded, allowing what we see in FNaF 1. Sometimes when you die, you're forcefully placed into one of 4 Atari-style minigames that give some extra lore, mainly hinting towards who could have killed the missing children and how everything began. We have one where Freddy delivers cake to children while a child cries outside as a purple man comes in his purple car and kills them, another where Foxy emerges from Pirate's Cove to surprise children, but in his third run sees the purple man with all 5 being dead in the room over, a third where you play as the puppet giving gifts to 4 dead bodies, those gifts being the heads of the main 4, and eventually a 5th appears for Golden Freddy, and lastly we have a free roam one where you play as Withered Freddy exploring the FNaF 2 pizzeria while following the puppet, and on rare occasion the purple guy will appear to attack you. These minigames act as such great groundwork to continue the storyline going forward. Now we know that the puppet gave the animatronics new life, the strange purple man was the killer, and perhaps the puppet was the first animatronic to become possessed. Of course, this will all be expanded upon in later games in the series, but fuck was this awesome to speculate on back in 2014. Phone Guy mentions that someone used a spare yellow suit in the back, causing the animatronics to go all haywire, and while at the time we all thought it was Golden Freddy, oh boy were we in for a surprise. To simplify all of my thoughts, while FNaF 2 ups the ante with more robust and polished gameplay and a bigger emphasis on world building with its breadcrumbs of lore pieces, I feel like the overall atmosphere, set design, and character design falters just enough to the point where I still prefer the original at times, which I know is not the common consensus at all. Still, when I think about my time with both of them, I did find myself more immersed, stressed, and tense with FNaF 1, but had more fun with the gameplay, strategicness, and the lore of FNaF 2, so take with that what you will. Just 2 months later, Scott would tease a third installment, with a trailer soon revealing some rotting green Bonnie animatronic in some run-down new establishment. The initial teaser made fans think this new animatronic was a wolf for a while, and honestly, I still kinda see it. 2 more months, and on March 2nd, 2015, Five Nights at Freddy's 3 hits Steam. This game is a lot more divisive amongst fans. Most people enjoy its greater emphasis on story, but find the gameplay too boring, so let's see for ourselves, shall we? FNaF 3 takes place in Fazbear's Fright, a haunted house horror attraction inspired by the spooky rumors and tales from the Freddy Fazbear locations of yesteryear, 30 years to be exact. You of course play as the Night Guard, duh, which in itself is a callback to the old locations. On your first night, nothing actually happens outside of the call you receive from the new phone dude, who plays tapes that Phone Guy recorded years prior during the following nights. Night 2 is when things kick into gear though, as deep within a sealed off room at an abandoned location was a new animatronic that had laid dormant for 30 years, a golden rabbit costume withered away by decades of rot and decay beyond recognition. This animatronic, formerly known as Spring Bonnie, is now Springtrap, your one true threat in this game as he's the only animatronic that can kill you. Springtrap can start the night anywhere from the very opposite end of the building from you or sometimes closer to the middle. Your way to fend off against him is to continually keep him as far away from you as possible at all times, as it's pretty fucking hard to get him to go back where he was once he's made his advance. Typically you can do this by playing a little Balloon Boy jingle that'll follow into the room over, but there are also many vents that lead directly into your office that he can crawl into at pretty quick speeds to get the jump on you, so you've always got to know where he is to lure him back and seal off those vents. What's in your way of accomplishing that is your maintenance system. You have a limited amount of Balloon Boy lures, time on the camera, and also clear ventilation until one of those three things fucks up and you've got to go all the way over to your other panel to reboot it, which takes what feels like at least 10 whole seconds. You've also got to deal with the Phantom animatronics, which are hallucinations of Withered Freddy, Withered Foxy, FNaF 1 Chica, Balloon Boy, Mangle, and the Puppet. Chica, Mangle, and the Puppet are found by going on to specific cameras that they can appear in while they're there, jump scaring the player in Chica's case, making loud noises in Mangle's case, and blocking your view in the Puppet's. Foxy can be found standing in your office while making your way over to the maintenance panel, and if you don't go back to look at your camera, he'll jump scare you once crossing his line of sight. Freddy walks along the hallway visible from your office window. You have to keep the camera or maintenance panel open for the entire duration of his walk across, as if you're looking at him for too long, he'll jump scare you. Balloon Boy's like Chica and the rest, but he can be on any camera, and you have literal seconds to click onto something else to avoid him. All of the phantoms when jump scaring you, aside from Mangle, cause ventilation errors which causes your vision to go in and out, and if Springtrap is outside of your office while this is happening, it's lights out for you, buddy. A jump scare from one of the phantoms also turns on Springtrap's aggression mode, which makes him move much quicker towards your office than he could otherwise, making any error potentially fatal even if the phantoms can kill you themselves. While I believe most people claim that FNaF 2 is the hardest out of any of the classic FNaF games by Scott, I actually found this game to feel a lot harder and way more punishing to the point where I just didn't end up clicking with it. Only having one animatronic to deal with means that he's got to be really tough to overcome, and for nights 2 through 4 it wasn't that bad, but the difficulty spike for night 5 and the even worse difficulty spike for night 6 was horrendous. Even with the most ideal strategies, you've got to rely on RNG to be your friend for any given attempt and hope that Springtrap is nice to you by spawning in a pretty decent location. I mean, for God's sakes, he can spawn halfway to your office at the start of the night, and to me, that doesn't seem fair at all. Sometimes, audio lures don't even work on him, and he typically gets the opportunity to move before you even get to finish recharging your audio, which you only get 2 uses of on nights 5 and 6, and less than 30 seconds of camera usage to boot. When I finally beat night 5 after 2 hours of trying, it didn't even feel rewarding. Instead, I just felt this overwhelming sense that it was finally over, which was not at all how I felt playing some of the harder challenges in FNaF 2. All of this coupled with the fact that the maintenance system is just incredibly boring as you just click on it, wait, and back to it. Like, that was 10 seconds I could have been doing anything else but stare at my monitor. Sure, you can listen to sound cues, but they realistically don't help you much at all. The thing that pisses me off the most, because its inclusion only serves to make the game more difficult in a way the player can't even really get out of, are the Springtrap hallucinations. That's right, if you get as much as one vent error in the later nights, you can see Springtrap in multiple cameras. Therefore, you could be trying to lure the Springtrap in Cam 8 into Cam 9, use your last remaining audio lure, go over to reset it, and yep, there he is, right at your fucking door. Enough of this difficulty shit. FNaF 3 finally moves the series back into scary territory for me, as I feel like the atmosphere here is definitely spookier than FNaF 2, but not as great as FNaF 1. Everything is just so puke green in your office, making it look real dull, and the dimness of the cameras and how much static covers it, not to mention the angles that Springtrap can be at, make it incredibly hard to spot him or sometimes even find him at all. Sure, making things dingier leads to things being scarier overall, but it also made things significantly less fun, and what you really want is a good balance of both. I also think that the graphics for Springtrap when he gets close to your office can be real goofy. Springtrap in FNaF 3 and honestly the Phantoms 2 are some of the best and scariest designs that Scott ever made for the series. Springtrap looks absolutely horrifying here, what with his literal organs and intestines about and the skull sometimes visible through the animatronic head, but when he's just staring at you through your office window, darting across it when you pull up the monitor, peering out the left side and swiping out of view, or when one of the wires in his ears pops out when you're looking at the maintenance panel, it all just looks really weird and unserious compared to his look in the cameras. And his jump scare. Don't even get me started on his jump scare. Both, depending on if it happens on the right or left of your office, just feel like he's saying a quick, "Hey, how's it going?" Compared to the ones from the previous games, these suck major ass, and hell, all the phantoms get genuinely great jump scares as they start from a standing point in your office to fully encompass your camera. Honestly, the greatest jump scares in the series so far, but Springtrap gets the short end of the stick as the main villain of the game. Okay, enough of the downsides. Let's stick to the positives, like the story. FNaF 3 attempts to culminate the lore droplets in the first 2 games into something tangible, via Phone Guy's tapes, the minigames in between nights, and the secret minigames to get the good ending. The Phone Guy tapes each night detail these spring-lock suits that Fazbear Industries made that allow suit performers to hold the animatronic parts in place so that they can walk around the actual establishment. But these suits are incredibly fragile and prone to breaking, especially when the mechanical parts can unlock into the person wearing them if any moisture is around. He also mentions a safe room that is in every establishment, not visible to the camera, not on the floor plan, nothing. What the fuck could be in there? Well, the minigames answer this. Each night, you play as one of the original 4 animatronics and roam around the FNaF 1 location guided by Shadow Freddy, and once you get near the safe room, you can't get in as the animatronics physically cannot enter thanks to their programming. Once turning around, Purple Guy jumps out of the room and dismantles you, not too dissimilar to what he does in one of the FNaF 2 death minigames. On the 5th night, the spirits of the kids are freed from the dismantled animatronics. Confronted by the literal children he murdered, Purple Guy is freaked the fuck out, but leaps back into the very same spring-lock suit he used to lure them into the back room so many years ago. But the years of decay on the building allow water through, locking up the suit and killing him in a bloody mess, leaving him to rot for nearly 30 years until he was finally found again as Springtrap. What really made this game feel like the conclusion was the ability to get an ending that freed the 5 children's souls from Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Golden Freddy. Hallways in the regular minigames provide hints to unlock these. First, you've got to make balloons show up in the others with Balloon Boys minigame, and then find a cake in Mangles by finding secret walls. Then you've got to find secret walls in all the other minigames to deliver cake to 4 children. Lastly, on the happiest day, you deliver cake to presumably the Golden Freddy child as the puppet, and lay all 6 to rest, finally able to move on. Seems like a nice and conclusive ending, right? If you manage to complete night 6, you're rewarded with a newspaper clipping that details how Fazbear's Fright was burned down in some crazy accident. But if you brighten the image just like the teaser Scott would release, you'd see Springtrap behind the Freddy figure, indicating that he'd come back another day. I mean, the trailer says, he does always come back. I do really like the step forward into the series accepting its fanbase's obsession with its hidden narrative by having its narrative need to be figured out piece by piece. Sure, theories ran rampant at the time, but I think what the games present alone make for a pretty interesting, albeit low-key narrative across the trilogy. That said though, overall, I do think that FNaF 3 is a really boring game, with the only thing people truly remembering from it being that final scene where Purple Guy dies. The gameplay is boring, the secret minigames don't look nearly as good as the FNaF 2 ones when the regular ones look just as fine as they were, and altogether, I think you can really feel like Scott rushed to put out FNaF 3 after the success of 2, even though the other ones were developed in a fairly short amount of time, yet still came out pretty damn good. I don't know, this is definitely not one I intend to return to personally, but no shame on you if you have a soft spot for it. Having seen the poor reception of what was intended to be the final chapter of the trilogy, Scott set out to make a new installment in a fresh setting with even greater scares that would right the wrongs that 3 made. Just under 2 months after FNaF 3's release, Scott announced Five Nights at Freddy's 4: The Final Chapter, which was to be released on Halloween that same year. By the time the trailer was released, the subtitle of the final chapter was dropped and was revealed that the game would take place inside someone's home. I genuinely think that this idea was an insanely great decision, as personally one of the easiest ways to not be scared by something fictional is to not only know that it couldn't exist, but that it couldn't get you at home. But now the animatronics have followed you home and they're scarier than ever. On July 23, 2015, Scott announced that the game had already been finished and decided to release it early. From what I understand, FNaF 4 is well received by fans despite its rough days at launch, with a few patches ironing things out. Does it still hold up, and is it scarier than the first? Well, the answer is overwhelmingly yes. This game takes all of the best atmosphere, ambience, spooks, grumbles, and scares that made FNaF 1 and 3 as scary as they were and turn it up to 11. I genuinely think that the setting of a dimly lit child's bedroom only lit by your flashlight is 10 times scarier than anything we've seen before. The multiple chimes with a grandfather clock, the random bits of radio static, the dog barking down the street in the middle of the night, and then just the general ambience that plays in the background throughout your night places this incredible sense of dread over you. This game requires headphones, and not on a "it's so immersive to play if you do" level, but they are quite literally necessary in order to properly play the game. As you could probably guess, no child has a security camera system in their bedroom to use at their disposal in order to fend off against demons in the night. So, what do? Honestly, the scariest thing you possibly could do. Fully rely on your senses to hear the deep, heavy footsteps of the nightmare animatronics in either hallway getting ever so closer to your door. Nightmare Bonnie attacks from the left and Chica from the right, with Foxy running back and forth between the two until getting into your room, where he then goes into your closet. You can hear Bonnie and Chica walk closer to your door from the center of your room, and if you shine your light down the hall, you can catch them making their way around the corner and scare them off for a bit. But if they're at your door and you shine the flashlight, you're dead. Well, how do you fend them off then? Instead of hastily flashing your flashlight to check for them, you instead have to carefully listen for their deep, gnarly breathing as if their gaping jaws lined with razor-sharp teeth are right next to your ear, typically for 3 seconds or so because they fall silent for a moment after taking a few breaths. If you hear their breathing, you close the door shut until you faintly hear their footsteps walking off and open the door again to run back into your room. On later nights, however, they'll fake you out, and if you don't check for breathing after reopening the door, it's lights out. Chica also has the unique property of heading into the kitchen, and if you hear the loud banging of her rummaging around in there, you're safe to not have to check on her. But don't forget that you can still hear slight quiet rummaging in the kitchen on later nights, so you've got to know your sound cues very well to succeed here. Foxy will be your biggest nuisance throughout your playthrough. As I said, he runs back and forth between the 2 hallways at the start of the night and can enter your room if you check the opposite door to the hallway he's in. Once you hear him come in, you'll see the closet door shimmy a bit, and depending on how late into the night it is, when you shine your flashlight, he'll either be stuck in place or do a half jump scare at you. Foxy will never leave your closet once in there, but by closing the door for several seconds, you can delay his attack, the most dangerous phase being that half jump scare and the safest being a little plush Foxy. Similar to Foxy is Nightmare Freddy, who uses the bed. He sends out his little frettles that accumulate on the bed to a max of 3, and you have to shine your flashlight to get them to run back under the covers. If you let the 3 of them stay in the bed too long, Freddy will get you. Bonnie and Chica can also only enter your room once you turn around to shoo Freddy away, and won't if you check in on Foxy, so in all of the chaos you can still use that to your advantage. With FNaF 4, we're back to basics with our 4 core characters, and honestly, bringing down the chaos of FNaF 2 with its 11 animatronics and upping the lack of activity in 3 with its mere 1 really allows this game to shine with its gameplay loop. You don't have much, if any, RNG against you that'll totally fuck you over. Practically every death in this game is your fault. You fucked up, and therefore it feels absolutely fantastic to overcome the harder challenges in this game. In between nights, you also have a little minigame called Fun with Plush Trap, featuring a little tiny Springtrap-esque animatronic that sits on a chair at the opposite end of a corridor. You have to keep your flashlight off and listen to him as he gets closer, with the goal being to shine the flashlight at him to make him stop at the white X on the floor. Succeeding in this minigame allows you to start the next night at 2 AM, but only for your first run. Honestly, this short little minigame is so sweet and brief that it doesn't break up the pace at all, and the nights themselves being 6 minutes exactly, 1 hour per night, makes the pacing of this game feel fantastic. Finding your own strategy to listen for footsteps, where Foxy is, check the frettles, check the doors, etc. feels so good and is incredibly satisfying to play and pull off. This incredibly comfortable and intuitive gameplay experience, mixed with the incredible atmosphere that will send shivers down your spine and make you leap out of your skin, in my opinion, makes this the perfect Five Nights at Freddy's game thus far. I definitely do have my issues with it, but we'll get there in a minute. Upon reaching night 5, you won't hear any of the usual sounds amongst the eerie emptiness of your house, but instead a new kind of footsteps. You hear them stop, you check the door, and there you see the giant horrifying beast that is Nightmare Fredbear. This giant golden animatronic with a purple top hat and bow with a giant fanged mouth for a stomach is the hulking behemoth you'll face throughout the duration of night 5 and from 4 to 6 AM on night 6. If you've gotten this far into the video and still don't know who Fredbear is, I'd say we finally delve into this game's story. For context, in FNaF 2, Phone Guy mentions an establishment named Fredbear's Family Diner as the predecessor to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. It wasn't until FNaF 3 where fans started to clue into the fact that Golden Freddy was most likely Fredbear, revamped to look closer to Freddy, and that Spring Bonnie was the other animatronic paired alongside him. Upon starting a new game in FNaF 4, you're greeted with a cutscene of a crying child, locked in his room with his plushes of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, and his talking plush of Fredbear, crying unable to leave his room. His father has locked him in here again. In between each night, we're greeted with a new cutscene that takes place the following day, with a countdown to a party showing before each one. Each night, you're either scared by your brother in a Foxy mask, scared by the giant man in the Fredbear costume, see a man get stuffed in a suit by the purple guy, get locked in a storage room with all the big scary animatronic skulls, or get teased by the other kids in the area asking why you're such a crybaby, or told scary rumors about the animatronics killing you and stuffing you in suits. Every day ending with your Fredbear plush saying, "Tomorrow is another day." This all comes to a head on the day of the party. Your birthday party. 4 teenagers wearing masks, including your brother in the Foxy one, tease the crying child, lifting him up to Fredbear to give him a big kiss. They put his head in Fredbear's mouth and the spring locks push down, crushing the crying child's skull. This event, although commonly mistaken for the Bite of 87 mentioned in the first game, or referred to as the Bite of 83 by fans, is canonically known as the Big Bite. If you manage to beat night 6, you're greeted to one final cutscene, with the crying child and his plushes in a dark void. You hear the voice of your brother apologizing, only to hear the voice of your Fredbear plush, reassuring you that they're your friends, ending with an ominous, "I will put you back together again," as each plush fades away. The scene ends with a faint flatlining sound, the crying child's eyes swell with more tears than ever, and the game fades to black. A devastating ending. Isolated, this game's story is brutal. You just play as a child who is consistently horrified by these giant hulking animatronics that he views as monsters and is made fun of by everyone around him, especially his brother, for just being afraid. No one helps him, no one supports him, and he dies at the end to the very thing he was scared of. Throughout the game, when checking the bed, there's a very small chance that upon shining the flashlight that you can spot a set of paper flowers, an IV drip, or a pill bottle next to the bed. To me, the implication is clear, that the events of FNaF 4 within the bedroom are the comatose dream hallucinations of a kid whose nightmares became manifest and is fighting for his life. FNaF fans know otherwise though, as that's not the end of the story. Night 7, aka Nightmare, pits you against an even harder version of the main 4, with 4 to 6 AM having you face off against a black and yellow translucent version of Nightmare Fredbear, just simply known as Nightmare. Upon beating this night for the first time, you're greeted by an image of a box, and dragging your mouse over the 2 locks shows that you're able to fidget with them, but not unlock them. The text, "Perhaps some things are best left forgotten for now," fades in above. In the Big 25, we know that this box represented the story of Five Nights at Freddy's in its entirety. Now, don't get me wrong, the individual self-contained story that this game presents is pretty great for what this series is, and what it was recontextualized as later is pretty great too in the grand scheme, but it is also so incredibly vague that it just doesn't entirely stick the landing in my eyes. But the gameplay is fun and frightening as shit, so that makes up for it. But to finally circle back around, the gameplay and horrifying atmosphere are fantastic, and the self-contained narrative helps establish you in the world that you're playing through in a way that no other entry to this point has, and I appreciate all of it. The game never stops being frightening, and the gameplay is forever replayable with the many great challenges to greet you in the post-game, like the aforementioned Nightmare mode, and Night 8 being a secret 420 mode by typing in the number 20 into the extras menu 4 times. You've also got challenge variations on Night 7 like a harder Freddy, a harder Foxy, an entire night against Nightmare, or even the ability to turn all graphics off, playing the game as an audio-only experience. And because the game was supposed to release on Halloween, Scott released a Halloween edition of the game that swaps in jack-o'-lantern versions of Bonnie and Chica, along with replacing Foxy with Nightmare Mangle, who spews radio static 24/7 if she makes it into your room, Nightmare Balloon Boy replaces Plush Trap, and Nightmare Ione replaces Nightmare constantly playing the music box jingle from FNaF 2, although Nightmare Freddy and Fredbear remain the same. Even the cutscenes are changed to have a few more Halloween decorations thrown in here and there. Regardless, I truly do think that Five Nights at Freddy's 4 is a phenomenal game. I couldn't help but be addicted to its incredible gameplay loop and mechanics that completely draw you into the world and every aspect of its surroundings, fully immersing you into every sound and creak you hear trying to find the bumps in the night. The sounds are horrifying, the nightmares are terrifying, the gameplay is enthralling, and this game is fucking awesome. If you haven't played FNaF 4 yet and want to play anything from this video, check this one out. Just like with FNaF 3, after FNaF 4, it seemed like the series was finally put to rest. The story had seemingly been concluded according to Scott despite Springtrap still being alive, but the children's souls had been set free and we got to see more origins within FNaF 4. With the series closing its curtains, Scott thanked the fans on his teaser website with a giant banner of every animatronic, thanking them for their support over the past year. This seemed like it was it, but of course, after a while, the FNaF 1 endoskeleton randomly became chibified? Over time, more and more characters started turning into chibi versions of themselves, with more being added into the group like JJ, the Phantoms, the Shadows, and even unwithered versions of Mangle, Springtrap, and Fredbear. A trailer would soon be released for what would be known as FNaF World, an adventure RPG featuring cutesy versions of all of your favorite characters. Scott, truly believing the game's story had come to a close, decided to go back to his roots with an RPG, like his underrated sci-fi RPG gem, The Desolate Hope. Controversy struck, however, when the game, per usual, was pushed ahead of its original February 15th, 2016 release date to January 22nd and still released a day earlier on the 21st. Upon release, fans immediately disliked the game, some for the simple reason that they didn't like that these indie horror characters had been made into some cutesy adventure game, but mainly because the game felt unfinished and rushed, which was true. Scott would later admit that he didn't see a lot of problems during development and put the game out a bit too early, too excited to show fans what he had made instead of sitting back and taking a better look in order to polish things properly. The backlash resulted in Scott delisting the game from Steam and offering refunds to players until a freeware update with a better overworld map and more fixes could be put out. In May 2016, Scott released a second update that added more content, more characters, and a new ending. So why don't we jump in 9 years later and see if the cult following that this entry has garnered is right to consider this the black sheep hidden gem of the franchise. First off, I went back and played the original FNaF World demo that's still sitting on GameJolt just to experience that awful initial overworld, and yeah, that shit sucked. You could only move in one direction at a time, the hitboxes on objects were too big, and you couldn't see enough of what was ahead of you. Thankfully, the first update fixed this in its entirety, turning the 8-bit minigame aesthetic into one that matched the combat's look. You can now move in multiple directions, see everything much more clearly, and see much more of the world around you. I actually do like how the overworld looks in this game, to a degree. It certainly fits the overall look of the game, but it constantly feels so barren and empty, with assets being copy-pasted all over. Yeah, that probably worked fine with the original look, but here it just makes things look much less interesting than one would hope for an RPG. Well, speaking of the look, why don't we talk about that? I think I, like most FNAF fans nowadays, have an appreciation for the adventure animatronics designs. That's what they're called, by the way. I genuinely think that Scott did a downright perfect job at taking these horrifying characters and turning them into cute-faced, friendly-looking little guys. I think the core 4 from FNAF 1 look fantastic, but Funtime Foxy, they are genuinely one of the best looking characters in the entire franchise. I think the Withered and Phantom animatronics don't look the best, with the Phantoms being the only ones to still retain somewhat of an eerie look, but even then, every character here looks fantastic. I actually think the Nightmares pull this off the best, coming off as really cool upgraded versions of the starting cast, although Nightmare Foxy does look pretty dumb. The enemies I personally feel can sometimes contrast with the playable cast, but not really at the same time. When you're running around a world that can switch biomes on the spot, running into a giant squid, giant blobs, mechanical axe cutters, and more feels expected. My favorite enemies though were the ones most similar to the animatronics, like Red Bear, White Rabbit, and Tangle, despite being recolors of some of the main cast. I do also like the design of the bosses Bubba and Pork Patch, but wish that more of the bosses could have been big-ass animatronic style characters instead of just these two. Now I say it's time we move on to the combat. For an RPG, FNaF World is very, very bare bones, and I guess this decision makes sense. One would assume that most of the fans who play the FNaF games are not RPG heads, and therefore making a much more simplistic RPG allows the accessibility of this game to be really wide and open to all players interested. This, however, is at the cost of the gameplay being really fucking boring for most of the game, as when you and your opponent's speed stats are really low, sometimes you'll just sit there while nothing happens just waiting for someone's turn to start. When someone's turn does start, however, they can use one of 3 moves. These moves cannot be changed, upgraded, or anything. Whatever character you use, that's their moveset, so building your perfect team is the game's true progression. There are several different attack types. Orange signifies attacks that target one enemy, while red attacks target all enemies. Pink moves heal the party, whereas white moves grant temporary stat boosts, and purple debuffs the enemy. Yellow moves typically have a random miscellaneous effect, and green attacks signify the ability to poison the enemy. Lastly, you've got black moves, which under certain conditions can instantly kill an enemy. Water Hose has a chance to insta-kill an enemy if it's under 30% health, whereas Unscrew has a small chance to kill an enemy outright. In Update 2, Vermilion attacks are exclusive to the Halloween Edition characters from FNAF 4, although other exclusive moves like Fourth Wall and Slasher, despite acting like red and black moves respectively, are labeled as purple, debuffs. Neon Wall 2 is another move in this update that, while labeled red, should be labeled yellow like the regular Neon Wall. Basically, Scott just didn't give a fuck to properly label these moves because they're overpowered as fuck anyway. During your playthrough, after a battle there's a random chance that you'll have a bonus encounter with an unlockable character, and if you win, you can put them in and out of your party whenever you want. Early on, you'll mostly find characters like the Phantoms, with the Wizards and the others coming later and are rarer finds. The Nightmare animatronics are really powerful, and the ever-elusive, incredibly rare characters that are Nightmare Fredbear, Nightmare, Funtime Foxy, Fredbear, and Spring Bonnie are uber powerful. Practically all of them at level 1 are way stronger than the Nightmares are at level 1, and they're as strong as the core crew at like level 40. Basically, the better characters you have, the more easily you can take on enemies and bosses, with the final characters being necessary to take on some of the game's hardest challenges. This, however, makes all the other characters practically useless once you get better characters, simply because their base stats and moves are significantly better. If your favorite character is FNAF 1 Chica, fuck you get Funtime Foxy now. Like Withered Bonnie, nope, Spring Bonnie is your almighty god. While I personally don't mind the cooler looking rare animatronics making up my teams, it does suck that the rest fall to the wayside. This is balanced out, however, by how fucking difficult it is to find these really OP characters. I was trying to go for every achievement in this game, and what was ahead of me was 4 hours of grinding just walking back and forth, hoping for a rare character encounter to appear. But I wanted this video out on time, so opening the text file that was my save and adding the missing characters in there was fine by me. I am not wasting hours of my life on this monotonous shit. Yes, it balances out the game, but there had to have been a better way. And I guess we'll talk about that later as well. Okay, to sum up my thoughts on the combat, it's basically a slog to get through at first, especially on new playthroughs. Your characters start out weak as hell, and it takes a good while, comparative to the game's short runtime, before you get strong enough to easily take down the game's mid-level enemies. Once you get to Area 4, unless you grind, you'll be struggling against most of the basic encounters from there on out. Fuck, most enemy groups here are harder to take down than the bosses, so if you aren't strong enough once you're in a new area, time to grind. I mean, how else was Scott supposed to pad out this already short game? Whether it be level grinding or character grinding, this is what changes the game from being a 45-minute romp into a 4-hour adventure. There's no beating around the bush here. This game is pretty boring in general, which is sad to see. Comparatively, Scott's previous RPG, The Desolate Hope, was leaps and bounds better than FNaF World. The turn-based RPG battles were exclusively against these large, hulking mechanical behemoths in these tense, high-stakes, and in-depth battles that looked gorgeous. In between the bosses were these fun 2D platforming Metroidvania-like areas where you ran around as a little robot named Coffee, not to mention just how insanely gorgeous the game itself and all of its environments and characters looked, with a great ending to top it all off. What did The Desolate Hope have that FNaF World didn't? Time. The Desolate Hope was a passion project by Scott which took at least 2 years to develop, whereas FNaF World released just 6 months after FNaF 4. RPGs are not point-and-click survival horrors where you stay in one position the entire time. Typically they're big sprawling adventures, and that's just not what FNaF World was. I don't for a second give a shit about it not being a horror game or having few horror elements. As we'll see with later games in this video, I like when the series can embrace its goofier side, but the lack of polish is evident and clear. The basic ending of the game has you fighting against a random metallic owl that's supposed to represent the security system, said security being the game's code as you delve deeper into the game itself to get to new locations, as something is wrong, but we never learn what. You beat the owl and you're made fun of for not picking hard mode, so you do everything all over again but slightly harder, therefore grinding even more, and face off against Scott Cawthon himself in some meta-narrative climax that is as goofy as the rest of the game, with one of the only good music tracks to accompany the battle. You can get other endings, one of which is the result of you delving too deep into the code and thus never being able to come back out, with the iconic Old Man Consequences there to chat with by the lake, or you can drown in said lake. One secret ending requires you to fight against the super boss Chipper's Revenge, angry at fans for liking FNaF more than his own game, which, yeah man, your game blows. And lastly, the most important ending, and a direct continuation of the brief cutscene that plays when you first open the game, the clock route. This requires you to wait on each of Fredbear's last lines of dialogue each time you speak to him, where he'll glitch out and tell you where to find 5 clocks spread across the map. Each time you speak to him, a new one will spawn in and he'll give you a hint as to where they are. Upon getting all 5, you can see one final cutscene, with the shadowy figure from the beginning congratulating you. It's pretty clear to me from the minigames that play when you get a clock that this was supposed to be how the minigames to unlock the good ending in FNaF 3 were put in place, and whoever speaks at the end was whoever spoke to the crying child in FNaF 4. I think this route makes the game a lot more interesting and should be what new players do when they first start up the game instead of having to play through the game all over again. My thoughts on FNaF World don't end there, however, as Update 2 provides a lot more fun to be had and is much better than the base game in my opinion. Once beating the game, you can enter a house in the starting area to speak to who I presume is the real Scott Cawthon and not the creator of the animatronics in-universe, who we'll get to much later. He warns of something that has gotten out of control and is afraid no one will be able to stop it. You're set up by Fredbear, who cuts his bullshit and tells you to find the characters hiding out in the back rooms of the FNaF 4 update, as they're the only ones powerful enough to stop this new threat, which is true. These characters are way stronger than any other in the game and are necessary to take down the update's final boss. To get these characters, you must perform well in several minigames throughout the back rooms. Jacko, Bonnie, Purple Guy, and Coffee from the Desolate Hope are obtained through the iconic FNaF 57 Freddy in Space minigame, which was originally a fake April Fool's teaser on the Scott Games website. Here you play as Adventure Freddy in a Metroidvania setup, where you're tasked with collecting cupcakes to power up your weapon and jump boots to get up to the layer of Scott Cawthon's head, a reference to Mother Brain from Metroid itself, as he taunts you by listing the silly names of all future FNaF spin-offs. The controls here are pretty simple, and so are the obstacles. The real fear is trying to find all 9 cupcakes to unlock Purple Guy, or beat the minigame with 0 cupcakes to get the coffee, the latter of which being an incredibly hard challenge which will be a running pattern. Nightmare Ione is the easiest to unlock out of anyone, with you needing to beat the Foxy.exe minigame to nab him, clearly a parody of Sonic.exe and runoffs of that. You slowly walk through as Adventure Bonnie as a giant withered foxy face talks to you from the skybox. Sometimes Withered Freddy appears before you, and you just have to walk slower to make sure not to bump into him. And lastly, there's a PNG of a cat that you just have to make sure doesn't spot you. That's really about it. Jacko Chica and Nightmare Balloon Boy are unlocked via the Foxy Fighters minigame, my personal favorite. Here you play as Adventure Foxy flying a plane alongside his buddies Toy Chica, Nightmare Chica, and JJ, fighting off their nemesis Souldozer, who was originally a boss in Scott's earlier game, The Pilgrim's Progress. I really like the quick maneuvers you have to pull to dodge the bullets, the many upgrades for said bullets, but the cherry on top of it all is the hilarious voice acting and dialogue spoken by each character. I think Toy Chica's cute voice isn't even that annoying or tiring as she puts it, but I'm sure replaying it a ton to get the final rank of A to get Nightmare BB can be taxing to hear her say, "You won't get tired of my voice, will you?" over and over and over again. The last minigame is the clear outlier as the one that everyone correctly says is the worst, that being Chica's Magic Rainbow, a minigame that is quite literally a rage game where the titular Chica's Magic Rainbow taunts you for your shitty game playing skills as you play through a hellish level as Adventure Chica. This minigame sucks. It's as plain and simple as that. Rage games exist, and they have a place to exist, but this is the minigame needed to unlock Mr. Chipper and Anim Dude, the latter of which being debatably the best character in the entire game, requiring you to beat the minigame in under 3 minutes, let alone beating it to begin with. It is here where getting these characters and actually beating the new final boss, that being Chica's Magic Rainbow returning for revenge, becomes a nightmare, as actually getting the right characters for the best party against the boss is atrocious. Fuck doing Freddy in space with no cupcakes, and fuck Chica's Magic Rainbow, the game and the boss. This is where the update crumbles apart for me. It's fun, sure, but actually beating it is a challenge nearly as hard as most max modes in the core FNaF titles. All in all, FNaF World has its place in the fandom, and that's alright by me. It's understandable why Scott delisted it at first, and why some fans are still not favorable to it even to this day, much like myself. But on the other hand, I wouldn't bash someone for liking this game to any degree. Maybe if it was their favorite RPG of all time, I'd have to sit them down Clockwork Orange style and show them some real shit, but still. I am glad that I finally sat down and played FNaF World. Would I ever go back to it?
No.
In between the release of FNaF 4 and World, Scott released the first Five Nights at Freddy's book, The Silver Eyes. This book, which takes place in an alternate universe, was the first in a trilogy that would infer a lot of shared lore going forward in the series, like an identity for the killer, the creators of the animatronics, their children, and the use of auditory hallucination discs that made bare-bones endoskeletons into terrifying lifelike monsters. Now, for this marathon, I decided to completely ignore the books in order to see if you can properly keep up with the franchise's story without delving into the many Fazbear's frights and tales from the Pizzaplex books. So going forward, please keep in mind that my knowledge on the books only goes as far as the game theory videos that were released back when these games were new. But if there's anything relevant to mention, I will. For a while, it seemed as if there would be no FNaF 5, but it didn't take long after FNaF World's release for teasers for a new game to start rolling out. I purposefully neglected to mention that at the end of Update 2, the gray man at the desk reveals Baby to the player, a new supposedly horrifying animatronic who speaks directly to the player with glowing eyes in the dark. He's then presumably killed by Baby, bleeding out onto the desk. In May 2016, Scott released the trailer for Five Nights at Freddy's Sister Location, the title immediately hyping up fans, as the phone guy tapes in FNaF 3 mentioned a sister location of Freddy's that up to this point we had never gotten to see. On October 7th, 2016, the game finally launched, Scott clearly taking his time to get this one right, as players were introduced to the world of Circus Baby's entertainment and rental. Sister Location changes things drastically for the series, shaking things up even further than what FNaF 4 did with its great change of setting. This time around, you're not just a security guard, but a nighttime maintenance worker at a facility used to contain rental animatronics while in storage. Over the course of 5 nights, it's your job to head down the elevator into the underground bunker and perform the tasks assigned to you by venturing into the facility, all while trying to avoid the new cast of deadly animatronics. You don't just sit in one location monitoring cameras or fending off animatronics, but instead are given unique new tasks each night that feature different gameplay from the night before. This allows each night to feel distinct, fresh, and fun, with no gameplay loops shared across each night. Sister Location has a greater emphasis on story as well, definitely in response to FNaF 4's subpar one, so this time around I'll review the game night by night. Upon opening the game for the first time, you're greeted with a unique cutscene of a conversation between who I presume are investors of Fazbear Entertainment and a man named Mr. Afton, while a shot panning up a dimly lit circus baby is shown. For readers of the books, the name Afton already rang many alarm bells, as that's the name of the killer in the novel trilogy, and, well, that's pretty much made canon right here. Afton is asked about the many features in the Circus Baby animatronic, such as independent dancing, singing, and the ability to inflate balloons. The investors seem curious about other design choices, however, as we cut to the title screen. This cutscene is incredibly iconic in my opinion, and serves as a great tone setter for not only the narrative, but the game as a whole, as an entry in the series that will really dial in on the story and not leave it something lingering in the background. Starting on your first night, you're greeted by Hand Unit, this game's tutorial character and your artificial assistant on relaying your nightly tasks to you. Your name, Mike, is posted on the literal keypad's head as it incorrectly punches your name in for you as Eggs Benedict. I'd like to quickly mention that this is the first mainline game to retain a small bit of the humor presented in FNaF World Update 2, and while some people may dislike that, along with the heavy science fiction elements that this game introduces to the franchise, I personally think it's a pretty cool direction to go in. I enjoy and appreciate the little nuggets of humor via Hand Unit, as it feels fitting in universe but never oversteps with the rest of the game's tone. The science fiction visuals also feel like a good step forward. We've seen animatronics decay in age and become freakish nightmares, but what if we had to deal with even more advanced animatronics? This isn't your typical Chuck E. Cheese joint anymore. These fuckers are pushing Disney theme park levels of impressive tech. On night 1, you face no threats. You make it down via the elevator and crawl through the vent into your main working area. You're asked by Hand Unit to check on the galleries of Ballora and Funtime Foxy, zapping them in order to get them back onto their show stage. You then crawl through the vent ahead of you into the circus gallery where Baby is being held. For whatever reason, the lights are out and Baby also isn't on stage. You keep shocking her and Hand Unit says she's come back, except she's not on stage. Regardless, your first shift is over. Congrats! You'll notice early on in your playthrough that this game does something different with Click Team's cylindrical backgrounds that were featured in the first 3 games, where your office is laid in front of you but circled around you to give a much better sense of perspective. This was removed in FNaF 4 but is back here in full swing, perhaps more than ever. You're given a custom cursor to even look up and down at your surroundings, with the cursor sticking closer to the center of the screen when looking around, almost as if a magnet is there for your mouse. It takes some getting used to, but I think it works well to sink you into the game's world. I do think that sometimes it doesn't work, like when characters are wheeled off screen, but that's really about it. The opening elevator works especially great as that was directly designed around it, as are most locations throughout the game. After every shift, you take the perspective of Mike back at home watching his favorite drama, The Immortal and the Restless, a show about a woman and her vampire boyfriend fighting over if her vampire baby is his or not. This definitely has some kind of lore implications, but my ass has zero clue, so moving on! At the start of each night, a brief voice clip of a little girl can be heard hoping to play with an unknown her and that her dad won't let her play. One can easily assume that the girl is talking about Circus Baby. On night 2, you're greeted with the angsty teen version of Hand Unit, yet another typo of what voice you wanted to talk to. When checking in on Ballora and Funtime Foxy, they seem eerily close to your window. You zap Ballora, but Hand Unit doesn't ask you to zap Foxy and instead asks you to just move along to Baby's gallery. Baby isn't on stage, and while the lights work, the controlled shocks do not. Thus, Hand Unit turns off all power to reboot the system, leaving you all alone in the dark with Baby. For the first time, Baby makes herself known to you, recognizing you, but unsure why. She warns you, telling you to hide in the crawl space under the panel in front of you, something that the last worker made to protect themselves. You hear the motion triggers of the other auditorium vents, and soon after you hear voices on the other side of the small metal barrier whispering to you as they poke and prod at it, look through it, and even try to pull the door out from you. If you don't grab it and hold it for long enough, the biddy bads will get you. Once they realize that Baby is watching them, they scurry away. Baby warns you of Hand Unit, saying that he'll ask you to run across Ballora Gallery to the other side, but that if you do, you will die. Instead, she tells you that Ballora cannot see, only hear, so if you stop once you hear that she's nearby, you'll be safe. Hand Unit comes back online, and as Baby said, failed to reboot the system, asking you indeed to run through as fast as possible. Of course, you heed Baby's advice, slowly crawling through Ballora Gallery as the door to the service area always seems so far away in the darkness, Ballora's music always circling around you, at one point even crossing your path. The biggest scare here is that Hand Unit makes a blaring announcement on the PA for you to hurry it up, but thank God he doesn't alert you to your position. I actually think this section, and one we'll talk about later, where you have to crawl across large open areas to get to the other side, are really thrilling. So far, the gameplay has been pretty minimal, but the decision to make everything you do a genuine task that your character is performing to survive or complete their job is really fun. Hearing that Ballora is on your right side, yet just out of sight as you crawl through the darkness is nerve-wracking, and I love it. All you do is press forward, and that's enough for me. You finally enter the breaker room, able to reset all of the facility's systems manually. Unfortunately for you, this is also where Funtime Freddy resides for whatever reason. Therefore, it's safest to only reboot each system by 50% or less, dropping the monitor, and then playing an audio lure of a character telling Freddy to go back to sleep as you have to carefully watch him go back to his starting position. One thing to notice here is the map of the facility, which includes several areas that you aren't able to go to, including a private area and some observation areas. This is the one part of the main game where you get something slightly akin to traditional FNaF gameplay, flipping up a monitor to do your task, but needing to flip it back down to deal with the looming threat that resides in the same room as you. There isn't a whole lot to fending off Funtime Freddy, but the patience required of you to make it through certainly helps with the anxiousness you feel when you hear him and Bon Bon moving around while you aren't looking. Once completing all of the system reboots, you're forced to crawl back through Ballora Gallery to get out of here and go home. There's a neat fake out where Ballora thinks she hears you, but you can't die in this section. You start your third night with an elevator ride accompanied by casual bongos thanks to Hand Unit's announcement that your poor performance the day prior has resulted in your pay being decreased. How great! You check on Ballora, who's been ripped to pieces it seems, but Hand Unit says it's okay, so it must be. What about Funtime Foxy? Not on their stage? Perfect! Hand Unit said so! From here, you're given two options. 1. Head through Funtime Auditorium to fix up Funtime Freddy as per your instructions, or 2. Go against Hand Unit and enter Baby's gallery. If you do choose the latter and head inside the safe space, Baby talks to you, telling you the story of the first time she ever gave a child ice cream, something she can make inside herself. One day, a long time ago, Baby was greeted by a single child, an unusual sight for her. When the child approached her, ice cream appeared from her chest, and all she remembers after that are the screams of the girl, followed by silence and the cheering of children re-entering the room. I personally really like this optional piece of content, giving the player agency to experience some extra background narrative if they so wish, but allowing them to continue their objective if they don't. Once heading to Funtime Auditorium, you must make your way past the motion-activated Funtime Foxy by continually flashing your flashlight as you make your way across, scaring him off if he's in your path. I personally think that this section is much less thrilling than Ballora's section, especially since it mainly just consists of you sparking the flashlight over and over and over again. Pretty dull, unfortunately. You finally make it to the maintenance room and begin to work on Funtime Freddy as per Hand Unit's instructions, pressing small barely visible buttons in a specific order to lift the faceplates to press one under his jaw, and opening his chest cavity to grab the power module. You must grab the second module on Bon Bon, but he's sneakily gotten off of Freddy's hand. He peers over Freddy's side if you aren't looking for long enough, but if you manage to catch him and press the button on his chest, you've completed your assignment. As you make your way back through Funtime Foxy's den, you begin to pick up on the noticeable lack of, well, Funtime Foxy. Soon enough, you're jump scared by him, and the night ends. No game over. Instead, you're thrown right into the next night, waking up in a spring-lock suit, having been placed there by Baby. The facility workers have been scurrying around trying to find Mike on the cameras after he didn't leave last night, but Baby says she's not going to hurt you. She tells you that you're inside the scooping room, passive-aggressively telling you that it's called that because it holds the scooper, wondering how a freshly opened pint of ice cream would feel if you scooped it. She hushes quickly as two maintenance workers enter the room, placing Ballora onto a conveyor and ends up right next to you as the scooper is then inflicted upon her, as Baby tells you that only she knows how to pretend. She opens the faceplate, telling you to rewind the spring lock so that they don't crush in on you and wait until morning when you'll be rescued. Here's what some people deem to be the most difficult part of Sister Location, so much so that upon release it had to be patched to be easier as so few people were able to make their way through it. Here, for several minutes, you have to continually wind all of the spring locks surrounding your mask by holding down on your mouse and hovering over them, all while Bellora's mini Renas climb up the sides and into your chest cavity. You don't have to pay attention to the ones going into your chest as they're shockingly harmless, but the ones going up the sides need to be shaken off or they'll jump scare and kill you. Eventually, your time will be up and the night will be over. Before the start of the 5th and final night, you hear the little girl say, "Daddy isn't watching." It's safe to say that she's the same girl from Baby's story. As you descend the elevator one last time, Hand Unit tells you that 2 technicians are still on site, and if you spot them, to ask them why they haven't left yet. Ominous. Upon checking on Bellora and Funtime Foxy, you see the shadows of the 2 technicians hanging by the neck over the show stages. Great! With everything all in working order, Hand Unit tells you to head to the maintenance area again to check in on Baby, as she's deactivated for an unknown reason. This is your first time coming face to face with Baby. She cuts off Hand Unit and talks directly to you, careful not to move so that the camera still sees that she's broken. She begins to guide you step by step on how to open her up, type in a password, and retrieve a communication chip, all while Bellora's bare endoskeleton lingers behind her, ready to pounce if you so much as take a few seconds too long. You send Baby off to the scooping room and follow her instructions to make it across Funtime Auditorium without meeting Bellora's wrath. Eventually, as Bellora stands directly in front of you in the pitch darkness, Baby tries to calm Bellora down, saying that you're here to help, in which she gives up, and allows you to go into the scooping room as Bellora is afraid of the scooping room. All this time, these eerie mechanical screaming sounds can be heard in the background. You never find out what these are, but they certainly convey the ominous sense that whatever is to come next is where these screams are coming from. Hand Unit warns you that you've entered a dangerous area, not meant for people to enter, but is once again cut off by Baby. The outer shells of all the animatronics lay beneath the scooper, as a large mass of electrical and metal wires wearing the same clown mask from your office lingers outside, staring at you with a horrifying glow in its eyes. Baby speaks to you about being unable to leave the facility, forced to play shows over and over again with nowhere to hide if she leaves. So they rip and gut your insides out with the scooper, stuffing their endoskeletons inside your body. Mike is home once again, the theme of his favorite drama playing in the background. He looks in his bathroom mirror and opens his eyes to see a purple glow in his reflection, the same mechanical screaming sounds intermixed. The end. And that's Sister Location. I know a decent chunk of the FNaF fanbase aren't as favorable to this entry as others, but I think the interactive narrative approach that this game took works really well at changing things up after 4 entries of pretty similar gameplay loops. I really like a lot of the gameplay moments spread throughout, all of which being pretty different in variety, and all of them being pretty effective except for Funtime Foxy's section. My personal favorites would be both featuring Bellora, firstly when crawling through her gallery, and secondly when stuck in the Springlock suit with her mini Renas. That Springlock section was actually really fun, although I do wish being able to hold down on the Springlocks instead of just clicking on them was made a little bit more clear. I did go through multiple runs where I just clicked on them only to realize I was being a dumbass, so this is really just me calling myself out. I think that the ending is pretty shocking and memorable, Baby finally revealing herself and her motive, and in the end successfully sneaking out of the rental facility via your body. Where could the story go from here? Well, boy do I have the news for you, because that is not the end of the game. Sister Location features the return of FNaF 2's death minigames, this time around featuring a single 8-bit minigame of Baby feeding kids a variety of cupcakes and a little platforming level. This minigame can also be accessed from the extras menu after beating the game. If you manage to pull off the surprisingly tricky task of feeding all the kids cupcakes, then you're given a single ice cream cone. If you also manage to do everything in a good amount of time and make your way back to the beginning and release the ice cream, a little green-eyed girl will appear from the side of the screen. Once she grabs the ice cream, a giant claw erupts from Baby's chest, grabbing the girl as the screen cuts to black. Of course, one can presume that Baby, who has blue eyes in the minigame, killed this girl and is now possessed by her spirit, resulting in Baby having green eyes throughout the rest of the game. This is confirmed in the game's fake ending, as it's called. Once you complete the death minigame, if you go through all of Night 5 again but immediately go to the right when going forward instead of the left as Baby instructs, you'll enter the private room as seen in Night 2's map. Beating the death minigame grants you the access card required to enter, otherwise you'll be denied access and killed by Bellora. You find yourself in a traditional FNaF-style office with 3 monitors in front of you, 2 side doors, and a vent. This is what is known as Ennard Night, a hard challenge against, well, Ennard, the mask-wearing endoskeleton conglomerate. It tries to get into your office via the doors of the vent while Baby speaks to you over the speakers, wondering why you didn't trust her despite her doing everything right to get you. Hand Unit also informs you that this is a highly restricted area and that the cleanup crew will be there to rescue you at 6 AM, after which you will be promptly fired. In front of you lies a Fredbear plush with a walkie-talkie, oh so similar to the one that the crying child owned in FNaF 4. If you type in 1983 on the keypad in front of you, the monitors turn on, revealing that they watch over the FNaF 4 house, even with a camera for Plushtrap's room. Those extra rooms on the map in Night 2 show where FNaF 4 took place, inside and above the facility, a fucking awesome twist that changes so much about what truly happened in that game. Baby pleads with you to let them inside to get your body, as otherwise they will never have another opportunity to escape the facility ever again. Ennard will make little metallic squeaks as it approaches your door or crawls through the vents, but you have to be vigilant as this night features a shockingly low amount of power. Using the cameras or doors for any longer than you need to can easily result in you losing enough power to get an outage before the end of the night, and thus easy entry for Ennard. With enough practice though, you make it to 6 AM, not without Baby trying to lure you out by using the little girl's voice, confirming without a doubt that she now inhabits Baby's body. Once completing your night, you're left with one last ominous line from Baby: "I will find a way out." But now, you're home, not scooped, with your exotic butters, sat back watching the season finale of The Immortal and the Restless. And when you know it, surprise! Your friendly pal Ennard came home with you! Thus concludes the fake ending, a pretty damn solid alternative conclusion that fills in a lot of extra story details and lingering questions that the player may have had in a non-canon setting, all while providing fans of traditional FNAF gameplay a little extra challenge for their efforts. I love this shit, and it was so rewarding to complete, although I have to say, how little power you get and how long the night is feels excessive. You don't get any time to appreciate all of the renders of Ennard in each room or the rooms themselves, so it just feels like a bit of a waste. And yes, I know the nights in FNAF 1 are as long as this, but after FNAF 4's nights being a succinct 6 minutes, it just feels like a lot. Didn't help that dying meant I had to restart from the main fucking office, going through most of regular Night 5 all over again. Doesn't change the fact that I still love playing through this ending though. That, however, is still not the end. Less than 2 months later, on December 1st, 2016, Scott released a free update for Sister Location, which featured a brand new custom night mode, the first since FNAF 2. This update featured the same gameplay as Ennard Night, but with a shorter time, now being 6 minutes like FNAF 4, and less brutal power supply. Unlike FNAF 1 and 2, however, you're unable to individually input the AI levels of each animatronic, with there instead being 10 preset challenges, each with 4 difficulties. Custom Night introduces hotkeys, which allow you to close doors, vents, open the camera, etc. with just the tap of a key, even allowing you to close the doors from the camera itself. A much needed improvement in my eyes, even though you still can close them manually like in Ennard Night. You're pitted against both old and new foes, like the returning Ballora, Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, Biddy Bab, and Mini Rena. However, new animatronics such as Bonnet, a female variant of Bonbon, Electrobab, Yendo, a yellow-eyed Freddy endoskeleton, and Lolbit, the orange Funtime Foxy clone character from FNAF World, are all introduced here. Overall, you have a pretty good lineup of characters and mechanics to deal with in each challenge. Both Ballora and Funtime Freddy utilize direction, essentially requiring headphones like FNAF 4. You have to listen for the volume of Ballora's music and where Freddy's footsteps go in order to close your doors accordingly to their mechanics. Funtime Freddy is pretty tough in my opinion, but a fun challenge nonetheless. Funtime Foxy, Electrobab, and the mini arenas are all dealt with in the cameras. Foxy by watching him in the cameras like a mix of FNAF 1 Foxy and Freddy, and the other two by going to their camera and shocking them, getting them away from your precious oxygen and power. Finding the balance of checking on Foxy while making sure the other two don't drain your resources with your oxygen being replenishable is also quite tricky, especially with how little power you have and how much can quickly be taken away by Electrobab or watching Foxy frequently so as to not get more power drained by him knocking on your door. This is made all the harder when you drop your monitor, as there is always a chance that Yendo will appear, who acts like Golden Freddy from FNAF 2, attacking if you don't flip your monitor back up again soon enough, all while draining your oxygen rapidly. This wouldn't be too bad if Bonnet didn't also typically appear at the same time, walking across the bottom of your screen. If you don't click on her nose by the time she gets to the other side of the screen, you'll be jump scared. Lolbit works in tandem with these two, appearing on the 3 monitors in front of you, with you needing to type in LOL on your keyboard to get her to disappear. If you don't, she'll distract you and disable your ability to check your cameras and use your doors, leaving you open to attack. Lastly, the second batch of mini arenas cling onto your face, never letting go, forever blocking your visibility to see if Yendo, Bonnet, or Lolbit may be in the room. It's all of these characters that make up the preset challenges, the hardest of which being pretty fucking hard. Golden Freddy mode, or 1020 in this game, is ridiculously difficult. I did not even bother trying to complete this. I did my 40 odd attempts, maybe got to 1 AM at my best, and gave up. The rest of the challenges, however, I did indeed complete. Sister Location's custom night is just inherently frantic and hectic. The introduction of hotkeys while still having to switch cams to get rid of Electrobab in the mini arenas while still watching Foxy can be a hassle. Keeping track of Freddy is also incredibly hard, and every time you lower your camera, you have 3 threats to deal with at once. The 6-minute match of juggling all of these things is so much to handle. Too much to handle even. I think eventually I just found myself bored of how intense everything was all at once, which is a shame. It doesn't help that the jump scares here can be pretty low effort, especially Yendo's. He's already just a PNG, but his jump scare is still said PNG yapping its mouth, not to mention that Bonnet and Lolbit are recolors of characters who already show up in this mode. I know Scott probably whipped this out in about 2 months, but there's just some holes that show through the cracks, you know? The reward for completing each preset on very hard, however, is pretty cool. Up until this point, completing the challenges in Custom Night or any challenge in FNAF typically only granted you with an extra star, an extra newspaper clipping, a plushie, or a cutscene for Night 6. This time, however, for every preset you complete up through 7, you're greeted with an 8-bit cutscene of a man strolling down the street as his neighbors wave hello. Each night, he grows more and more grotesque until he's all purple and slouched over, practically unrecognizable from what he looked like before, neighbors continuing to stay in their houses, afraid of him. In the last cutscene, he keels over and vomits out a pile of metallic wires and eyes into his sewer drain, collapsing to his death. Baby's voice can be heard repeating, "You won't die," as the eyes from the metallic pile peer out of the sewers as the man stands back up, alive, despite being an empty husk. Clearly, this is Mike after the events of the main game, with Baby and the rest of the animatronics now separated from his body, and Mike alive as a literal walking corpse. This sets up a lot for the future of the story, with Baby and the gang running loose and Mike a zombie, with the purple color of his body very clearly linking him to Purple Guy. And wouldn't you know it, the elusive cutscene for beating 1020, one I'm sure not a lot of players have actually seen in game themselves, myself included, is the greatest of them all. We fade in on a burned down building as Michael begins to speak to his father. He speaks of accomplishing what he set out to do. Find her and put it back together, exactly as he told him to. But now, there's only one thing left to do. He's going to go find him. And as the Fazbear's fright sign comes into view, Springtrap stands up from the ashes of the haunted house. Boom. What a fucking cliffhanger. We finally get a brief continuation of FNaF 3's ending, with Springtrap remaining alive after the fire, once again hinting that the future of this series will tie everything together. Springtrap, Michael, Baby, etc. And boy oh boy, it sure does, but we'll get there in due time. To get back on track, Five Nights at Freddy's sister location is a great time, and one I think more people should appreciate for what it is. Sure, the gameplay as a whole isn't as engaging or fun as FNaF 4, and that's including Custom Night, but what it makes up for in being an interactive story is fucking awesome, and a great step forward for a series known for its hidden narrative. The sci-fi elements, love them. Do they take away from the series' more monstrous designs and darker themes? Not in my opinion. While not as replayable as the first 4 games, I can definitely see myself going back to Sister Location in a few years to play it front to back all over again. There's just something about it that I love so much that was never replicated in the series again. After the release of Sister Location, the future of FNaF was very unclear for a while. There was a long time where Scott was announcing progress on the next mainline FNaF game alongside a Pizzeria Tycoon simulator. After a while, however, he said development fully moved over to the Pizzeria simulator to the dismay of fans. Over several months starting in late summer 2017, he would slowly update teasers for this small little 8-bit spin-off. On December 1st, 2017, 1 year after Sister Location's Custom Night released, Scott announced Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, and it released just 3 days later on December 4th. The game itself is a simple 8-bit game featuring Freddy picking up and throwing pizzas to feed kids, with 3 pizzas feeding 1 kid. You even get the option to choose the toppings on your pizza before starting. Imagine fans at the time, playing the first new game in over a year only for it to be this incredibly brief freeware spin-off that will be forgotten in a couple of days. But that wasn't the case now, was it? After round 3, where Shadow Freddy blocks you as an obstacle, the game begins to glitch out more and more and more until it just crashes. Suddenly you're placed in front of a table facing what could only be a withered version of Baby. You look down at the table in front of you and see a tape recorder along with a sheet of paper listing yes, no, or unsure. You play the tape. The voice begins to explain your current nightly task. An animatronic has been found outside in the alley, and it's your job to play the tape featuring audio prompts, noting if it reacts at all. The audio prompt continues to play, you continue jotting down your answers, but Baby doesn't budge. The man on the tape begins to count down to one last audio prompt, but you hear the tape click. Baby finishes counting down and looks up at you. The game cuts to black. Suddenly, yet again, a modern-looking training video for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place begins to play. It looks like you're a new franchisee, and now it's time to get ready and make the company proud. Of course, Hand Unit's voice is the one to communicate all this to you. You're then given the remaining $100 you still have after buying the franchise license, and you're off to the markets, buying products, displays, equipment, games, and more for your pizzeria, and once you exit, you can place down whatever you want. That's fucking right, folks. Scott was known for his troll games, but this was the best rug pull anyone could have ever possibly conceived of. For months, Scott built up this Pizzeria Tycoon, with fans pleading for him to focus on FNaF 6. Even when this game got announced and released for free, fans were still disappointed. But to learn that Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, also known as FNaF 6 Pizzeria Simulator, was not only the Pizzeria Tycoon Scott promised, but also the full-on next mainline installment released once again for free, was nothing but fucking awesome. You start the game on Monday, with your goal being to make it to the big party on Saturday, while you'll need, quote, all of them in one place. You start your day tallying up all the money you made from the previous day, in which you can then spend it on whatever you want, upgrading your pizzeria, investing in animatronics and show stages, arcade machines and games, etc. Once in blueprint mode, you can place whatever you want, and you're even given 10 play tokens to test out some of the games. You've definitely noticed this cutesy little Funtime Freddy looking guy, and his name is Helpy. He's essentially the mascot of this game. A majority of the games to play here feature him on a generic blue background and are pretty fun. The best of the minigames, however, we'll get to in a minute. Playing these minigames, performing well in them, and placing down new items increases your Faz rating, and hitting stretches of 1,000 in that gives you $100. The better your entertainment value, the more money you'll make during the day thanks to your lovely customers. Your health and safety balances out your risk meter. The higher your risk, the more likely you'll be to get a lawsuit at the end of the night that you'll have to either fight or settle. Always settle these if you get one. You'll be spending more money in the moment, but much less in the long run. You can reduce risk by adding safety straps, clean what you buy to add more to your environment score, and also add extra coin slots to make more money. You can get heaps of extra cash by accepting sponsorships, which give you a lot of money at once, but you've permanently got advertisements placed all over your pizzeria and elsewhere that we'll get to later. You can also buy certain items at marked down prices every day, but I also don't recommend getting these unless you're intentionally increasing your risk, or as the warning itself says, letting unwanted things inside. After you finish up, you open for the day but have to go to your office to do some work. Print some flyers, paperwork, clean the toilets remotely from your computer somehow, and order some more cups, plates, and cutlery for the next day. On your first night, you'll be a-okay in this creepy tiny crawl space of an office jammed in the middle of a ventilation system, and it can stay that way if you make the wrong choices. Yep, the wrong ones. After every office segment, once you're closing for the night, you go out to the back alley and find an animatronic laying there. On night 1, it's Molten Freddy, the blob of metallic wires that Michael spit out last game but now missing baby, having reformed with a Freddy-esque face and a top hat with Funtime Freddy's voice. On night 2, you have Afton, aka Scrap Trap, the remains of Springtrap after the Fazbear's Fright Fire. On night 3, we've got Scrap Baby. It seems like Baby was kicked out of Ennard and has had to piece herself back together, now featuring a horrifying design featuring tons of hair pieces and a giant fucking claw. The last animatronic you get is on night 4, that being Lefty, a black variant of the Rockstar Freddy animatronic that you can place in your pizzeria. You can also place Lefty in your pizzeria for the low price of $5, but with an insane amount of added risk. Your goal once bringing these animatronics inside from the alley is to salvage them for parts, with the amount you get for successfully salvaging them increasing from $500 on night 1 to $1,000, then $2,000, and $5,000 for Lefty. After every audio prompt is played on the tape, you must pull up your paper over your face. Doesn't matter if you jot anything down or not, just that you let the animatronic have the chance to move the tiniest bit. It can change positions twice, with its third position being an indicator that it's about to attack, but if you don't check your paper for long enough on the second pose, it can strike then too. You aren't left defenseless, however, as you're armed with the ability to electrically shock them up to 3 times before decreasing their salvage value. You don't even have to do the salvage to begin with and can instead just throw it back out into the alley, but if you do proceed with the salvage, which you should, you not only get a ton of extra money but also progress towards the best ending. Sometimes, however, a sign simply saying that the animatronic already got inside can be on the other side of the table instead, meaning you bought a marked down item, or in Lefty's case, the Lefty animatronic itself, and it snuck in that way. Sometimes, but very rarely, an animatronic can just get in on their own with no outside influence, but the chance is only 3 in 50. The consequence of letting an animatronic in is that they will now appear in the ventilation system while you work once opening. There's no set time limit this time, however, with your goal simply being to complete all of your tasks, log off, and go home. But when up to 4 animatronics are gunning for you, you've got to strategize and be careful. The name of the game here is patience. These nights can take a while, but how rewarding it is to learn and master the gameplay loop here in order to get all of your tasks done and get out of there without the use of any cameras or anything is fucking awesome. Like, this game is so rewarding, nearly as much as FNaF 4 in my eyes, but maybe just not as fun. You're given 3 tools to defend yourself: a motion tracker showing where an animatronic just moved, not where they presently are, an audio lure to lure animatronics in a certain direction while also showing the movement of the vent blocks directly around it, and a silent fan to help slow the rising temperature of your office. You see, if your office reaches 120 degrees, you automatically die, and your computer being on generates heat and noise. Your fan decreases your room's temperature significantly, but at the cost of making equally as much noise as your computer, so with both on, that's a lot. Your goal is to make as little noise as possible so as to not attract animatronics towards you or into your office when they're nearby. However, you're also armed with a flashlight to shine down the shafts directly next to you, so if you hear a noise in either the left or right vents getting louder and louder, make sure to turn everything off, fan and computer, and shine that light down there until you hear nothing for a good amount of seconds. You can hear sounds coming from the left and right of your ears, but if you're facing a vent and hear sounds in both ears, then they're ahead of you and you should keep shining your light. If you hear the noise coming from both at the same time, just spend 4 to 8 seconds before swapping to the other. If you decide to accept any sponsorships, loud, blaring ads play on your computer, which you're forced to watch until you're able to skip them, which also makes a fuck ton of noise, so all animatronics will be heading on their merry way to kill you. Once again, just turn everything off, be calm, be patient, and wait until it's safe to turn your computer back on to continue your tasks. It's best to save up money to buy the 3 computer upgrades, which makes ordering of your products make no sound instead of normally making dial-up sounds, makes printing twice as fast and quieter, and paying a handyman to help with maintenance. These are definitely necessary if you're struggling with later nights, so make sure you save up for these no matter what. I was incredibly frustrated with this gameplay loop for a long time, as it seemed like no matter how much research I did, I just couldn't figure it out. But the moment everything clicked, I felt fucking awesome. Being so incredibly locked in, listening intently through my headphones, which are necessary by the way, through the blips and clicks of my computer to hear for scratches and bangs in the vent, and ignoring the voice lines of several characters on their way to get you, all while being incredibly patient yet sometimes greedy with my tasks, was so rewarding. I went from thinking that this game had one of the most annoying and tedious gameplay loops in the series to believing that this is just behind FNaF 4 for me in terms of said gameplay, as I really began to have so much fun once I got the hang of it. The pure anxiety and stress that poured out of me as I focused all of my attention trying to hear any crack while printing off my papers or unclogging my toilets was so nerve-wracking yet satisfying, and there's nothing else in the series quite like it. And for all of this and more to be free, you just can't beat it. Now that we're done with the gameplay, it's time we move on to this game's narrative. For most fans, Pizza Sim is the game from the Scott era with the best lore elements, and I have to agree. Despite the main gameplay of this game having little to no lore outside of seeing the animatronics you salvage and having them enter your pizzeria, not a whole lot happens until the ending. Even then, that's only if you got all the animatronics inside and didn't set any other ending up. Pizzeria Simulator has 6 endings, one of them being a bonus added onto the canon ending, each granting you a certificate for completing your first week under specific circumstances, all rewarding you with a certificate on the title screen for getting each one, and of course a funny unique ending cutscene from Hand Unit. In fact, you don't even have to complete a week for the bankruptcy ending. As for that, you have to get sued and dip your money into the negatives by trying to settle or fight the suit. This ending, however, restarts your save file, even making you replay the initial 8-bit minigame again, although all achievements thankfully remain. A similar ending, the mediocrity ending, can be earned by managing to complete the week with a Faz rating of 0, meaning you have to not place a single thing down, upgrade your pizzeria, or play any minigames, and all without getting sued so you don't lose to the bankruptcy ending. This is best done by buying the sanitation station to reduce your initial risk of 1, which also doesn't increase your Faz rating. The blacklisted ending may be the hardest to get, as you need to end the week with a risk level of 50. This is most easily done by purchasing heavily marked down items throughout the week, trying to accumulate as many items with 5 to 9 risk as possible, and placing all of them down at the end of the week to reduce the chances of animatronics getting in. Now we get into the endings that actually pertain to the game's narrative itself, starting first with the Lore Keeper ending. To acquire their certificate, you need to play and complete hidden endings in 3 different special minigames: Fruity Maze, Midnight Motorist, and Security Puppet. The first features a young girl running around a maze, collecting fruits and power-ups, with the goal being to get everything in the level by the time the timer runs out. If you replay the minigame after beating it, this time a yellow rabbit will appear up from the ground and a bloody dog will be added to the items. The girl at the cabinet's face no longer holds the same smile it once did. If you beat it again and play it one last time, the yellow rabbit, or Spring Bonnie, will be behind the girl playing it as she cries, images of her dead dog's corpse littering the maze as her character now walks much slower, unable to collect any power-ups. A car horn blares loudly in your ears, signifying how the dog might have met its demise. The yellow rabbit offers to show the girl where her dog is. He's still alive! She just has to follow him to the back. It is heavily speculated and believed that this girl later became Chica, finally showing us how Afton traditionally lured in his victims. Moving on to Midnight Motorist, the base minigame itself features you driving a car intermixed amongst traffic. The longer you can maintain top speed for without hitting a car, the higher your point meter gets, with the minigame having 4 laps. However, during the 4th and final lap, a gap in the level's wall can be found at the bottom, and driving your car into the side of it will trigger the rest of the minigame. It completely changes, the car now distinctly being the same as Afton's from FNaF 2's death minigame. From here, you drive down narrow roads surrounded by trees. You can find a pile of dirt which fans have yet to this day been able to decipher, a bar named Junior's in which Afton has been kicked out of, showing he may have been drunk, and lastly, Afton's own home. I personally choose to believe that this takes place directly after the child's death in FNaF 2's minigame. Afton gets out of his car and walks inside. Presumably Michael, watching the TV, says to leave the other person in the house alone. You go to their door and bang on it loudly, demanding to be let inside, but no one comes. Angered, you go around back to enter through the window, only to find it shattered, with small footprints walking away from the house alongside one set of giant animatronic footprints. Afton spouts something about the child going off to that place again, presumably Fredbear's, and the minigame ends. While Fruity Maze is a fun and stressful minigame, I personally think that Midnight Motorist is the most fun and replayable out of any minigame in Pizzeria Sim. I mean, out of the Lore Keeper ones it quite literally is, but yeah, I could replay Midnight Motorist over and over again and not be bored. Some of the more basic ones just have too little going on for me to care all that much, and that's a shame in all honesty. Lastly, the Security Puppet minigame just requires you to play it 4 times in a row. Your task is to find children with bands of your assigned color and not let them walk outside through the exit, thus not letting them get lost outside. During your first 3 plays, a child wearing a green wristband, the color you've been assigned, never shows up, but on the 4th playthrough, however, a young girl is stuck outside wearing the bright green wristband you've been told to look after. She fades away into the darkness, and you as the puppet finally break free from all of the gifts that the children piled onto you. You leave through the exit, walking into the downpouring rain on this dark and cold night. As you keep walking to the right to find the child, the rain keeps on hitting you, causing your circuitry to continue to fail as you break down more and more. But you're determined. You keep going. The water has almost gotten you. You're on your arms and legs, crawling. But she's there in the alley, lying down, motionless. You crawl over and wrap your arms around her cold, dead body, hugging her as you shut down. God, honestly, that minigame may be the most emotional moment in the entire FNaF series for me. Seeing the puppet before it was ever possessed be so determined and hold so much willpower to save the girl, only still to be too late, yet hugging her as it shuts down is so powerful to me. The sound of the powerful rain filling you with a sense of anxiousness knowing what's to come only makes the moment more powerful. Truly incredible. Completing all 3 minigames awards you with the Lore Keeper certificate on your title screen. Upon finishing the final night with all animatronics, you're greeted with the completion ending, but not before the best cutscene and ending in all of Five Nights at Freddy's, Henry's final monologue. Upon finishing the night, Baby speaks to you, proclaiming that you fell right into their hands, believing that her, Afton, Molten Freddy, and Lefty have been called here to be granted a gift, the gift of a pizzeria full of children. Tiny little souls for all of them to pick off one by one, feeding their murderous intent. Ready to make her daddy, Afton, proud, she is cut off. The man from the cassette, who's revealed elsewhere in the game as Henry, Afton's original partner who partook in the creation of the original animatronics, reveals his master plan over the PA system, his master plan to end everything once and for all. He has called everyone here purposefully, trapping them within the ventilation system, unable to ever escape to find the children they wish to kill so dearly. He wishes for the souls of the original 5 children to finally be put to rest upon leaving Molten Freddy, Elizabeth to regain herself upon the death of Scrap Baby, and for Afton to burn in the darkest circles of hell for all of the atrocities he's committed over the years. He begins to address you, the player, who he originally had an out for, but knowing who you are, knows that you're right where you wish to be, going down with the ship along with him. Presumably, you're playing as Michael Afton, ready to finally put his father down after failing to do so after burning down Fazbear's Fright, and truly save his sister instead of keeping her as a murderous robot. Lastly, Henry calls out to his daughter, who he had called here knowing that she was not like the others, not a killer, but a protector, hoping that she can finally be lifted into the arms of another, like how she had for so many fallen children before, while also confirming that the child that the puppet tried to save was indeed his daughter, now possessing the puppet trapped within Lefty. The building's temperature continues to rise and rise, the hell demons burning for good, this whole nightmare coming to a close. End communication. Of course we have one final cutscene from Hand Unit giving us a certificate, but after that, if you succeeded in getting Lore Keeper, you're greeted with a shot of a bright hill with 6 gravestones, the name of 4 being visible, implying that the souls of the dead children have truly, finally been put to rest. There is a good reason why this ending is viewed as fondly as it is. I remember when this game launched, hearing Henry's monologue for the first time. The line delivery and just how incredibly well written the whole thing is, along with how potent the shots and imagery is truly masterful. There's nothing else in FNaF quite like it, and there never will be again. Even the beginning of the scene being Baby, taunting you at her most evil state we've seen her in, fully detached from the baby who is unaware of the girl she had killed before, yet now armed with a giant metal claws or fatal weapon, sets the tone for this scene immediately. Henry's speech would be nowhere near as good if he didn't cut off Baby in order to explain his plan to diminish her sense of hellish glee. If Afton were to be the one that spoke first, I don't think the line, "The darkest pit of hell is open to swallow you whole, so don't keep the devil waiting, old friend," would have hit nearly as hard. Even finally concluding the puppet's story to boot, showing imagery from all the way back to FNaF 2, is just magical. Scott did make this game with the intention of concluding and wrapping up a lot of the mysteries and storylines from the series up to this point, and oh boy does this ending do a phenomenal job at truly wrapping up what had come before it, as yes, this is the end of the first era or story arc of games in the series, narratively speaking. The last ending I have yet to talk about, the Insanity ending, requires you to buy the Egg Baby, place it in your pizzeria, and then when at your computer doing tasks, click and hold on the now blue power button and turn your computer on and off. Doing so will play a hidden tape from Henry titled HRY223, talking to himself about the horrors that Afton has created and caused over the years, now determined to cease his inaction and stop everything once and for all. Somehow, he learned that Afton had lured back the original animatronics and made them into something new, aka the Funtime animatronics and now Molten Freddy. On the computer screen, we see several devices Henry used to enact his plan, like a frequency emitter to call the animatronics and the Lefty suit to house and calm the puppet. We also see Afton's blueprints of the scooper, which was actually not used to take apart animatronics but to steal the remnant from them and place the reservoir of it that it holds within into something new. Remnant is not something that is entirely important to this game, but will be more prominent in the next era of games and is more important in the books. To get back on track, I like this ending and the extra context it provides to the true ending of events. I also think it's pretty funny that Fazbear fires you and locks you in an insane asylum for finding it instead of just letting the game continue on after hearing Henry's plan before it's enacted. And that's Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, a game with a unique playstyle that's difficult yet fun to master, and a conclusive story that brings everything to a close with a nice beautiful bow. I personally think that it's pretty hard to complain about this game. Sure, I wish that the catalogs and minigames were more expansive in the blueprint section, but the night and salvage sections leave nothing to be desired. I'm sure some people would have liked cameras, but I think not having them increases the sense of dread. I also do wish that you didn't have to pull the low-res texture of the sheet over your face during salvage, instead looking down at the table like in the game's intro, as it was right there to use, but that's just me looking for something to nitpick. This game is certainly fantastic and one of the best in the entire series. I knew I'd like it going in, but oh boy was it good. Now before we close this video off, we have one more entry in the Scott Games era to discuss, that being Ultimate Custom Night. This game was initially planned to be a free update for the already free Pizza Sim, but it grew so big in size that Scott decided to publish it as its own separate release, also for free. It was released on June 27th, 2018 on Steam, and to this day is the final Click Team style game in the series and the most expansive one at that. UCN features a whopping 50 animatronics that players are able to set to any difficulty they wish between 1 and 20, along with 16 preset challenges that players can test their skills against. For every increase in 700 points, you're awarded a special cutscene, aka you get your first at 700, next at 1400, then 2100, etc., all the way up to 9800. The cutscenes are just fun gags featuring 2 series of shorts featuring illustrations of anthropomorphic versions of the characters. You have an anime-style one titled Bear of Vengeance, where a samurai version of Freddy plots against the evil Foxy and his pet Mangle, but always seems to fail, being forced to do a menial task until his next attempt at attacking Foxy's temple. You also have Toy Chica, the high school years, a play on how Toy Chica has always been viewed as the most attractive animatronic, featuring her writing into her diary about a boy she likes, hinting at how she'll lure them in to kill them so that they can be hers forever, being seen in the following cutscene with a piece of them in her purse. The cutscenes swap back and forth between the two, first Bear of Vengeance, then Toy Chica, then Bear of Vengeance, and so on and so forth. The final cutscene we'll get to in a bit, but for now, these cutscenes act as fun little rewards for your efforts, and for some challenges, effort is an understatement. Yes, of course with this game you can set the animatronics to whatever you desire, but to complete the game by beating all challenges, viewing the final cutscene, and beating 50/20 mode is a monumental feat, as this is easily the hardest game in the entire series. I mean, fuck, you have 50 animatronics to go up against. Sure, some are much easier than others, and some can't even kill you, but there are a select few that just make any run an absolute nightmare, which is exactly why this was the one game that I didn't bother to beat for this video. I like to think to myself that I'm decently good at video games, but this was the one thing that I could not torture myself with. You have a starting office that features things from all of the main games, but can unlock more for reaching better high scores. At 2000 you get a sister location Pizza Sim office, at 5000 a FNaF 3 office, and at 8000 a FNaF 4 styled office, which is much brighter than the rest, therefore you'll be more easily able to spot enemies and hazards within the office itself. While getting that brighter office seems wonderful as the rest are so dim, you getting 8000 points would already require you to beat a night with 40 animatronics at 20 AI and 49 for the final cutscene. The name of the game is to learn everything. Yes, everything. There's a group of animatronics that attack from the vents, either needing to be blocked by gates placed in the camera system or blocked once they get to the door. The mediocre melodies from Pizza Sim attack via the ducts, needing to be deterred either via audio lures or via the heater. You have to keep the music box wound to satiate the puppet and Chica, as they'll attack if it's not wound or if you don't change the music box's tune once Chica exits the kitchen. Numerous animatronics head for your office doors, but Balloon Boy, JJ, and Afton head for your bottom right-hand vent. Several animatronics are already inside your office and must be dealt with once the cameras are flipped down. A handful of animatronics require you to keep the heat or noise in your office down. Some animatronics require you to purchase a plushie of them within the camera, or they'll attack you within a certain period after appearing in your hallway. But the most annoying animatronics are the ones that need to be dealt with within the camera system itself. The plushie ones are hard enough, as getting the fast coins to purchase just one plush is rough, especially on 20 AI, but Foxy, Toy Freddy, and Funtime Foxy are all run killers. Foxy needs to be watched on the camera to halt his progress, but even when your camera's down, there's a figure on your desk to show that he's still making progress as he puts himself together piece by piece within your office, with his progress really only being stalled if the Bonnie figure is on your desk, meaning he's taken over Pirate's Cove, but will disable your camera for a good bit if you look at him in the camera. Toy Freddy is in a cam of his own, playing his own mini version of FNaF against Mr. Hugs. Even on a lower AI, Toy Freddy fucking sucks at this game, and when he dies to Mr. Hugs, which can happen fast, he guns for you and there's nothing you can do. Basically, you have to keep locking the proper doors within the cams for him, as the poor fucking baby can't do it himself. Lastly, Funtime Foxy requires you to be looking at his camera the exact millisecond it strikes the hour stated on his sign. If not, you're dead. All three of these fuckers are incredibly inconvenient, but luckily you're allowed to purchase 1 death coin per night for 10 Faz coins, allowing you to straight up remove 1 animatronic from the night. Balancing those three along with getting enough tokens to get the death coin, the plushies, and balancing everything else with a fucking stupid amount of hotkeys that this game has that you have to memorize and juggle amongst the animatronics all over the place makes this game ridiculously hard, much more than any previous in the series in my opinion, worse than FNaF 2 or Sister Location 1020 by a lot. Yes, it is doable, but mostly with tricks that the game itself probably didn't intend for you to master, like flicking the cameras in just the right way to reset the ventilation without triggering a jump scare from an animatronic who's just waiting for you to bring up the camera, or flipping the camera in just the right way that it never fully comes up but does enough for a chance of changing what figure is on the desk. I think it was already hard enough to master all of the shit that this game threw at me, but now I have to master 0 frame flipping and camera stalling to beat the rest? I'd rather keep my sanity, thank you. That isn't to say that this is a bad game at all, far from it. If you left any FNaF game looking for a better challenge, you've definitely found the right place. Ultimate Custom Night is a celebration of the series that Scott spent over 4 years developing, featuring Easter eggs from the entire series including FNaF World, such as Old Man Consequence being one of the 50 animatronics, and Dee Dee from the same game showing up to add more animatronics to your night just to piss you off. Already have all 50 set to 20? Psych fucker, she's got 6 more bonus animatronics hidden up her sleeve to add to your misery that you can't select from the menu. As the most customizable out of any FNaF game, that also by proxy makes it the game in the series that is most tailor-made to the player's wants, and that's fine by me. Out of the challenges that I did manage to beat, I found juggling everything and adapting to just how many fucking things were in my way rewarding and fun, but I have my limits. The amount of Easter eggs and sheer amount of characters is nothing but commendable, and even how many characters were given voice lines for when they kill you is an even better touch. So then, why don't we move on to the voice lines and therefore the story, as believe it or not, this game is canon to the series but in the most unique and awesome way possible. Immediately, you think to yourself, duh, this game can't be canon, all these characters can't exist at the same time. Cheek and Withercheek are the same animatronics, Springtrap and Afton too, and you'd be right. As you keep playing the game, being killed by more and more animatronics, you'll hear more and more voice lines. Some characters will have silly voice lines, some pertaining to their mechanics, and some pertaining to their character. But every now and then, the voice lines will reveal things about the circumstances of your player character. Take Nightmare Freddy for instance, a character who doesn't really exist in universe. Whether you believe he's a coma-induced illusion, made from fear gas, or an auditory illusion disc, he still doesn't look like that in universe. But here, he announces that he's been given flesh to torment you specifically. Others mention being aware of your situation, being trapped here with you to keep killing you over and over again. Some continue to mention the one you should not have killed, and here we start to piece together the puzzle. The mediocre melodies specifically have the greatest voice lines of them all, outside of Mr. Hippo who has hilariously long monologues that cannot be skipped, not even by closing the game. On certain occasions, they seem to become possessed by a young voice, echoing them in the background as their usual cartoonish voices are suddenly very, very serious. Now you know how it feels when you killed someone else, and they will make sure you continue to feel it over and over and over again for the rest of time, the spirit assuring you that they will never let you leave. The face of said spirit can even be seen at times faded into doorways, appearing in front of you when lowering your camera, or flashing on the screen when you die. The final cutscene for beating 4920 and reaching 9,800 points, a lone shot of FNaF 1 Golden Freddy, who is not in this game, while FNaF 2 Golden Freddy and the original Fredbear model are. Golden Freddy, atop a black void, convulses, the first time we've ever seen him move as he fades away into the darkness, the ominous music playing out with him. We get more details from Old Man Consequences just like in FNaF World, as setting his AI to 1 and catching his fish brings us to a recreation of his ending from that game, telling us to sit for a while as the demon faces his demons. The droning noise in the background, the sound of a man screaming in agony, shouting out his hate for the one that put him here. It seems that in Ultimate Custom Night, you play as the spirit of William Afton, trapped in an eternal hell after the ending of Pizzeria Simulator, dying to animatronics over and over and over again in an infinite death loop orchestrated by the vengeful spirit within Golden Freddy, forcing him to pay for his atrocities for the rest of time. I personally think that the little amount of background narrative here, obviously present for the always lore-hungry FNaF fans, is a perfect little epilogue for this era of games before moving on to what's next, elevating what's here into even greater heights. Ultimate Custom Night, while convoluted in its gameplay, is still a solid and well-polished experience that challenges even the toughest of FNaF players, all while still providing a great celebratory send-off for this part of the series. Just like Pizza Sim, it is shocking that this game is free because it sure does pack in a lot. So that concludes the first part of this retrospective of the Five Nights at Freddy's series. I think the end of the Scott's Games era is a good point to put a pin in this review. This selection of games holds a special place in my heart, as these were the games that released at the height of my FNaF fandom. I remember following the development of each game, waiting for each teaser, and upon each new game's release, waiting for all the theories and explanations to trickle in. After Ultimate Custom Night, and more so before that with Pizzeria Sim, I just slowly faded out, not keeping as many tabs on the series. But these games are really special to me, no matter how many flaws or imperfections I think they have. FNaF 4 and Pizza Sim may have been my favorites, and FNaF 3 and World may have been my least, but in spite of that, each game from this series had something unique to offer that no game before did. Each game tried to innovate upon what came before to make the next installment that much better for the ever-growing fanbase that ate up each and every new game, myself included, and that I will always appreciate. Next time, in part 2, we'll be picking up from where we and Scott left off, reviewing all of the games that succeeded the end of Pizzeria Sim, seeing where the story, world, characters, and the Freddy Fazbear IP goes next. Will the bigger, bolder games be better than what came before? Who knows? I'll be going into everything practically blind, albeit for the few things I've seen over the years. I am really excited to see what comes next and to see what Scott, Steelwool, and all the other dev teams that have worked on this franchise have accomplished. But that'll have to wait. Until next time, thanks for watching. Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video. I've been wanting to do this one for a long time, so I hope it was worth it. I wanted to say some shoutouts and thank yous to my girlfriend Lauren for gifting me the first 3 games on Steam, my buddy Dan for making all of the renders in the thumbnail, and my buddy Logan for loaning me his PSVR 2 so I can cover the Help Wanted games in Part 2. Hopefully it shouldn't be too long until Part 2, but until then I hope you guys enjoy FNaF Movie 2, and see you next time. Bye!